na atatoa membership na bado atakuwa analipwa kwa kazi.
I believe Kenya is at a very great moment right now for the cooperative movement, and more specifically for the worker cooperative model. Given the advancements within the policy and legislative space to entrench the worker cooperative model and recognize it, as well as having pilot worker cooperatives that are ready to advocate for the needs of the worker cooperative and promotion of the same in the country.
Tulikuwa tunaitwa chokora, mpaka mimi nilikuwa narudi nyumbani naulizwa kwani ulienda shule juu ya nini jamani? Na hii kazi ya machokora hii hata hahitaji shule, unaona? Lakini saa hii vile tunaongea saa hii hawatuiti chokora. Saa hii wanatuita Kigro, na tumepata jina kulingana na hii kazi vile tuliichukua serious.
My name is Susan Wawero. I am the Deputy Director Legal Services in Nairobi Metropolitan Service, which is under the Office of the President. It's important to continuously develop your knowledge. It's important in a dynamic world, in a world that now is globalized, to develop your knowledge. It's not enough to know what your profession does. It's not enough to just know about your company, your city or your country. It's important to know what the region is about, what the world is about, because as we've seen with COVID, the solutions to problems are now global. So it's important to impart yourself with solutions from the whole world so that you have a holistic decision to do. I enjoyed that Strathmore Business School had a global outlook towards solutions. I mostly enjoyed the case studies. They were very practical to what I was doing at the time, and even now. It was something I could take from the classroom directly into my...
Okay, I'll request we take our seats and get started on the next part of the program. Welcome to the next part of the program. I'll request everybody to get a copy of their programs, and I'll give you a quick sense on some adjustments we will make. Kindly flip over to page 8, which is the second part of the program. All the way at the end of page 8, you'll notice it says 3:45 to 5 p.m. is a networking baraza, and we'll have a set of refreshments where you can again meet and engage. We will eat into a bit of that time to be able to recoup, and we'll try and move a little bit faster through the rest of the programs, but I commit we should still be done by 5 p.m. as we are targeting today. And the networking baraza is just an opportunity for you to get and to meet and engage socially. We've already done the group photo, which was 11:30 to 11:45. And so the key things we have are a set of presentations and then panel discussion. So if you flip back to page 7, and I believe we have both Bobby Mkangi and Dhoni Njoroge on standby. The next part of the program is actually yours. So we'll start off on page 7 at the very end. We have a presentation of the highlights of the post-public processing program journey. And then we'll have a presentation of the impact assessment. Those are taking roughly 20 minutes each, but we may be able to compress them into 15 minutes or even less. So I'll invite Muthoni and Bobby to come over. Immediately after that, we'll hear from Madam Diana Kendi on behalf of the county governments, and specifically as the county executive committee member Nyeri, overseeing matters cooperatives. And then she has about 30 minutes. So we'll see how to navigate those 25 minutes. And then if it allows, we'll move into a panel discussion where we're going to unpack some of the ideas in greater detail, but to the extent we run out, we may push that to lunch, after lunch. So we target to have lunch maybe around 2:15. And if necessarily, we can push it a little bit later, as late as 2:30. We're good, Muthoni? All right, karibuni sana. So we'll start by getting presentations of what has happened after the training, and then we'll get detailed presentations of a survey that was undertaken, and we have Tom in the room. A special greeting to those who are following us online, on YouTube and on Twitter, karibuni sana. We had an exciting morning program and look forward to the remainder this afternoon. Over to you, Muthoni.
Good afternoon. My name is Muthoni Njoroge, and I'm joined by my colleague, Bobby Mkangi, who will introduce the presentation, and we will commit to stick to the 15 minutes.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Hamjambo. In fact, the deal between me and Muthoni was I introduce so that I can do and try to get the protocol right, but I whispered to her that I'll use what retired Chief Justice Willie Mutunga used to do when dealing with protocol when he was Chief Justice. And you'd come to the podium and say, because most of the times you'd come after other speakers, and say, because all protocol has been observed, I will move on to my discussion. And I think in order to save time, that is what we'll do. Move to the presentation, and Muthoni will take the first part of it, which will deal with the initial stages, the preparatory stages of getting into the actual preparation and drafting of the county policies and county bills in draft form. And then I will come in and deal with the assessment of how the journey was in terms of the challenges and the achievements, and prod out what has stood out from this journey for the CLEAR program overall. Asanteni sana, karibuni.
I see our presentation is not yet ready to be projected, but I'll start on it to save on time. Our presentation basically is coming in after the morning session. You heard a lot about the public policy making program. So what happened after that? Now that people had been trained and counties were equipped, what followed in the CLEAR program? There were several stages. As an overview, we first had the stakeholder consultations and policy dialogues, because the way the program, the CLEAR program had been structured was that after the training, we would start the drafting sessions and prepare the drafts for the counties. So we conducted stakeholder consultation and policy dialogues. After that, there was technical assistance to the national government to draft their national bill. I will explain. This is just an overview. And then there was collaboration with Council of Governors to develop the draft model frameworks. Then those draft model frameworks were taken through validation. And thereafter, COG adopted them and circulated them to the counties. I'm sure you received emails on that. And then after that, we have been having county-specific drafting workshops to incorporate those specific issues from the counties. On the preparation of drafts, we as consultants came in just after the program had ended, and our first mandate was to draft a model policy, a model bill, and a model regulation. However, one of the challenges once we started doing consultations with the county was that counties were waiting for the national government to start or to present a draft before they felt confident to do their own draft, so that they know where the national government is going to. Because of that, we as global communities, we supported the national government to come up with their draft bill, cooperative bill, and even supported them the public participation forums. The support we provided was technical and logistics. So we facilitated, just like Olga had explained, a lot of things we did with government had to involve co-contribution. Thereafter, we now had a panel of legal consultants that were onboarded, myself and Bobby included, to provide the technical assistance in the legislative drafting. And that's how we came up with the model frameworks. The model frameworks here means the model county policy, the model county bill, and the model county regulations on cooperatives, which were then also submitted to the same process the national bill had gone through: the public participation, the validation, and creating consensus. So for the public participation, because this was county-oriented, we involved the Council of Governors to circulate the request and the documents. We also held workshops with different categories of county leaders, including the county attorneys, the directors, the chief officers, the CCMs, and the county governors at that time. This was just before the elections. Once they were validated, they were owned by COG and circulated as the model documents on the basis of which the counties were going to be drafting their own county bills. With that, just after elections, we started with the county-specific drafting. This was demand-driven. By demand-driven meant the counties had to request specific support depending on the stage at which each of the counties were. Some of them already had a bill enacted and now they wanted to amend. Others had no documents at all in the cooperative sector, so we would do the 3 documents: the policy, the bill, regulations. Others would request stage by stage, and those are the ones we are mentioning as 21 counties that have been supported in a period of 1 year since this was September, yes, immediately after elections last year. So after that, we have had some counties that have proceeded to enact their bill and subsequently come back for support on regulations. We have had some that already had bills that have had them amended and passed by their county assemblies, and others are at different stages of passing the documents we helped them draft. One of the unique characteristics of the drafting workshops, as most counties would attest to, is that most drafting is done by a consultant, and then you're sent the materials, and then you pass them through your county assemblies. But our approach was we needed the technical officers in the workshop. Actually, most of the workshops were heavy on the technical officers. Some counties also invited the county assembly members. Most of the time, the committee that is responsible for cooperatives. Others involved the county attorney. We always insisted to have a representative of the county attorney, and of course the CCM and the chief officer and the directors of cooperative. The reason for that is we wanted to give as much technical support to the persons who will eventually be essential in passing these documents once we are done with the drafting. And that has been one of the key success in having a faster turnaround time with counties, because it was very inclusive and involving of all arms of the county governments that are involved in a policy-making process. The other thing is with those workshops, a lot of counties have, a lot of the previous government, national government seconded officers are retiring. And so they have a lot of new officers. So they also got an opportunity. The workshops used to serve as if they were training or induction meetings because the counties for a long time have had shortage of funds, so they had not been able to prepare their technical officers. So it seemed as a very good opportunity to transit from the previous CAP 490 to the new law and provide both the national perspective and now what the counties would do, which was really appreciated a lot by the counties. I will now hand over to Bobby to discuss the challenges, the achievements, and what we have learned from that process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, my colleague and my sister Muthoni. And maybe I would like to compliment you. She's one of the foremost in cooperative law. So as you step down, I'm sure those of you who worked with her can bear me witness, isn't it? Okay, I will go straight to the challenges. And perhaps maybe I'll start with two, which may not appear on our board, but have been mentioned. When this journey started, it started and was hit by COVID. So the pandemic was a big hurdle. I think the initial design of this program and project, and especially the drafting aspect, was to be more in-field, more of us consultants, working with the counties, directly within their spaces. But because of COVID and the lockdown, this first of all delayed the process, but also made it very difficult for us as a consultant to directly and in person work with the county. So by the time we're getting started, a lot had to be changed and redesigned, and that's why for the 21 counties that we've been able to work with, we worked with them here in Nairobi. The other challenge, Muthoni mentioned it, and I think the speakers in the morning also alluded to it, is the aspect of the elections and how electoral cycles do change or affect many activities in the country. So we started around sometime late last year, finally after everything had been considered, and the few counties that we started with. But come around election time, then everything had to be put on a hold. Change of or transition of administrations. Some of the technical officers had ambitions of going into electoral office and all that. But the long and short of it is, as you know, election cycles and activities do affect greatly activities, both within government but outside. And so that also was a challenge for this post-PPMP journey. And then the first one, you can see the time it took to build consensus. I think that I won't belabor. It's 13 years now. I think Bwana Marube spoke to it in the morning. The PS also alluded to it, that by the time we were getting our ducks in line, it took a long time. And so eventually all these affected the activities, including counties themselves, as you can see on the second aspect. Counties waiting to get direction from the national government, and not in terms of being directed on what to do, but because, again, to meet the challenge that Mr. Marube talked about, that we don't have 47 scattered and incongruent pieces of legislation, there was some prudence in counties trying to wait and see what uniformed standardized direction the national entity, we as a country, were going to take, so that counties could also follow suit. So this time we've taken to do this really affected many counties, and still there are those counties who are in a way hesitant to take the first step, because they are still waiting to see or hear what direction, and especially the national legislation, is going to take. And then logistics, as we always know, and especially the aspect of logistics tied to the requirement for co-contribution, which Olga spoke to early in the morning, and thanked the counties that were able to put their hands on deck, have their skin in the game in terms of their own contribution. But these were challenges. There were challenges initially, I believe there still remain challenges to some counties, but I think for the 21 of you that are here or represented here, you serve as a good template and example to the others that may want to walk this journey. And then lastly, this I would prod out as the biggest challenge. This lack of direction or understanding about the division of labor. When Akizito did speak to the express allocation of the regulation of cooperative societies as a county function. And fourth schedule, section 7, paragraph E of the Constitution. And so there is that, but also there is a reality. And so in terms of unpacking or unbundling this function, because the function is regulating cooperatives, but also based on the fact that since 1908, when Kenya got the first cooperative, we've been regulating this entity. Again, considering it's an international entity, this has been regulated centrally and nationally. And now for us to begin the new journey of decentralizing this regulation, I think has been a headache to ourselves. And I think that's why there are some counties who still want to see what direction the national legislation will provide. And especially on items where the role was traditionally beholden to the State Department for Cooperatives, issues to do with registration, inquiries, liquidation, registration of amended or bylaws, etc. So all these are questions, constitutional questions that are out there, but I believe there's some direction through the talks that have been going on between the Council of Governors and the State Department for Cooperatives. And I think once we see the bill tabled in Parliament, we may have an idea as to the exact direction. However, to point out that as we've been meeting with counties, we can tell that there is a resolve and there is a synthesis of the fact that perhaps in as much as this is an expressly pointed out function for county governments, the Constitution also allows for cooperation and consultation. And in that regard, when we unbundle this function, we can see that there are certain tasks where we have to share, we have to consult, we have to have some concurrence in different aspects of dealing with this function. And I think the 21 counties that we've worked with are born testament to this realization. And I think that's a direction, the best direction perhaps the country can take in regulating this very important entity. And that observation drives me to the achievements. And the first achievement is the fact that we have 21 counties. We have 21 counties that have already embarked on the path of enactment of bills and also subsidiary legislation in terms of regulations, and also in terms of adapting or approving policies, therefore, county-specific policies. And again, I have to bear regard to sessional paper number 4 of 2020, which requires us as county governments in breathing life to the Constitution to come up with county-specific policy documents and county-specific pieces of legislation. So for the 21 that have already started walking this path with a clear program, I think that's a very, very good and big achievement. And secondly, as Muthoni mentioned, we also did get, and to hear testament and testimony from different counties around how previously perhaps such ventures were being done, or in other sectors in terms of, it's a consultant who writes the document and then gives it to the county, and then the county either approves, or sometimes we hear of stories of, because it was written by a consultant, it was kept on a shelf, or it was as some people would say, sat on. And what that meant was that there was no ownership. There was no ownership of the process. There was no ownership of the documents thereof. And that's why the CLEAR program changed tact. And even us as consultants, we said we have to write these documents. We have to draft these documents together. And even you heard of the teams that we wanted to work with, including the county attorneys and the legal officers, the technical officers in terms of the cooperative officers and the leaderships. And we are happy for those counties who, even the waziris, were able to come and participate in these ventures. So in that regard, of the 21 counties that we have, none had less than, I would say, 7 persons going back to the county, having a good understanding of the draft document, and for that, having good buy-in and ownership. And that's why we believe, and I've been even talking to some of you, and we've been communicating, you're on different paths, but these documents are actually going to be eventually realized. The other one, achievement also, what we'd say an externality, but also a positive one, that when we'd sit together, we'd be able to learn from each other, share information, benchmark, especially around discussing the policy documents. You'd say around a policy intervention, there's this county that is going to use this intervention to deal with a certain challenge, and then another county would absorb it, the different styles and the nuances. And that was very, very beautiful, including many of us working out as expert draftspeople, expert policy formulators, now actualizing the PPMP training. And I believe all of us who went through the 21 counties that went through the drafting process, all of you are experts in knowing what mutatis mutandis means. Eh? Yeah. So that was also a very good achievement. And then I've talked about the nuances, but also the intergovernmental stakeholder synergy that was created through this process, birthing it, processing it so that it can start. I think it has created very good networking and partnership matrices that can be utilized in the future. And I think, finally, just to say, the CLEAR program, through the PPMP and also the drafting program, there's been a lot that has been realized. I think Olga spoke to this early in the morning, triggering the regulatory reform process, and I believe the 21 are going to be the trigger for the remaining 26. I mentioned about the strengthened collaboration between state and non-state actors, and then the ongoing intergovernmental policy dialogue. And I think this, again, is at 2 levels. Within the counties themselves, where we are finding good discussions going on between the county executive and the county assemblies, but also at the vertical end of it, between the county government and the national government around this. But finally, an idea which we even had the PS testify that he had never heard of, and many of us had never heard of, or we have worked with but didn't even know that that is the model, is the issue of the worker cooperative. I think this was one big takeaway even from the drafting workshops, where at some point we had to adjust the programs going forward, and Pamela had to make a presentation about worker cooperatives because each county that came along was very much interested in learning about worker cooperatives. And beyond going home with draft policies, draft bills, and draft regulations, many took home the idea of worker cooperatives with a commitment of effecting the same in the counties. So we feel that this exercise, this journey up to where it is, has been very, very fruitful. We have very committed technical persons, county leadership, that we believe going forward are going to see the fruition of this, and not for the benefit of ourselves as public servants, as public-spirited persons, but at the end of the day, for the Kenyan child, the Kenyan lady, and the Kenyan gentleman. So for those very many few remarks, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of you for listening to me and my sister Muthoni, and kila laheri katika charo ambacho kiko mbele zetu. Asanteni sana.
Thank you very much, Bwana Bobby Mkangi and Muthoni Njoroge, for those perspectives. I will invite Tom Kimani on behalf of the project team to guide us through the impact assessment, and he'll provide a little bit more details on the feedback we received from the participants after the training through a quantitative and qualitative survey. As they set up his slides, I'll just give some context. When the training happened, immediately preceding, there was a baseline assessment. And that baseline assessment gave a feel of areas that needed to be focused on during the training, and also gave a feel of who the cohort was and what some of the perspectives of the respective cohorts were. After each training, there would be a session to go over what had been covered during the class. And also at the end of the training, there would be additional assessments to get a feel of some of the emerging issues. So for those who took part in the course, you remember there were baseline assessments, there were ongoing assessments or evaluation, and then there were summative. The summative assessment happened a little bit after the training. First, a survey was issued to all the participants, the 200 plus. I believe 100 plus responded. It was a mixed methods survey. It was actually a semi-structured survey. There were a set of quantitative questions, so a lot of very rich feedback on what your journeys were, how things changed along the way, key highlights that cut across all those who went through the course. And then there was a qualitative section which asks you to give your insights, perspectives, descriptively. Thereafter, a small subset were taken through in-depth interviews. I think about 6 or 7 of you who are in leadership roles were asked a set of questions to provide even deeper insights. And I'm delighted to report that we have results from that impact assessment. That's what Tom is going to talk us through. Pay particular attention to some of the things that emerge when we get to an interactive session. We'd want to get your feedback on whether this accurately captures your sentiments. So without much ado, Tom, karibu sana, the floor is yours. And I'll cue the team at the back to put up Tom's slides. Karibu, Tom.
Thank you very much, Martin. Yes, indeed. Martin has set the stage very, very well. He's given a brief summary of what happened. And maybe what he didn't mention was that even before each cohort, the story really began when that baseline assessment from global communities on the CLEAR program, that's where it began, because it came up with the issues surrounding the capacity needs, particularly in policy making and drafting, okay? So what we were doing as Strathmore Business School was simply to implement what CLEAR was trying to do. So each of those pre-course questionnaires or test surveys were actually going eventually to speak to what the program required, what the participants required. A very quick highlight on what some of the needs we found were. One of them has to do with the fact that, yes, most people said that they had absolutely no idea and they didn't feel confident about this whole idea of public process, public policy making, and especially also to do with drafting. Most of them said that is the area where they felt they needed a lot of intervention. The other thing, which is no coincidence, was the whole idea of gender mainstreaming. We took a very deliberate effort through the CLEAR program to check how the gender question was being thought about through. So those are some of the things that actually fed into the PPMP program. So now, again, Martin has mentioned the methodology briefly. What we did is that we actually picked some of the items that were foreseen during the pre-assessment, pre-PPMP assessment, and then tested the same. Some of them included, were you able to participate in any discussion, public policy discussion after that? Yes, that's a quantitative findings. Yes, please, you can put the entire page there. And these are some of the findings, yes. I think some of these Dr. Nyenga mentioned, and we saw that after PPMP, at least 60% of the respondents were able to participate in the legislative process. At least 60%. They had an idea. Not only that, but they actually took part in legislative process one way or the other. Of course, the good thing is that part of that legislative process was happening in line with these interventions that you've just heard about from Bobby Mkangi and the CLEAR program officials, these events to do with technical assistance. So a lot of them said that, yes, we are actually confident and we've been able to actually put this learning into practice. Because essentially that's what this post-PPM assessment, impact assessment was. Of course, the other thing we wanted to do is to see what practically you are able to retain and use. So those are some of the objectives that we set out to achieve. So legislative process, and then of course 47% of the respondents had participated in drafting of laws in the period after PPMP. Of course, as Bobby and the team that has just spoken alluded to, at the time of PPMP, the whole idea of the national bill, cooperative bill, was still up in the air. Let's not call it up in the air, but the process was very much ongoing. And there were some of those people who may have felt that, let's wait and see how things turn out. So if not everybody who went ahead and participated in that program, then some of them actually did come and did participate in the drafting of the laws after PPMP, and specifically through the CLEAR-led consultative process that took part before the national bill was, the discussions were being prepared in preparation for the national bill. So 62% stated that their counties had either achieved their goal of highly or very highly from PPMP training. Now that is significant. That's very significant. Now research shows that if you are trained, on average, people who go through skills and knowledge training retain about 25%. Retain about 25% of skills and knowledge that come directly from training. So to find cohorts overall that people either achieved their goal 62% directly from PPM training, that is significant. That is pretty significant. Now, even better was that a lot of the people, 80%, indicated that they had an excellent or very good meeting of personal objectives, learning objectives. We are talking about specifically that has to do with learning objectives from PPMP. Remember, we had asked them, what are your learning objectives? What is it that you wanted to achieve from PPMP? And a lot of those people spoke about their desire to grow as as individuals in their jobs, to become more competent in specific skills and knowledge, and especially things to do with stakeholder, individual, and conflict management. Stakeholder management, stakeholder engagement, conflict management, some of what you call the softer skills. And I can tell you from a lot of the respondents, even when we are dealing with the qualitative, a lot of people reported that they are able now to engage at any level, with any level of people. National government, other ministries, and of course, even downward to the cooperatives whom they serve. They are able to sort out a lot of the conflicts that are to be found in the sector, among the cooperators, among the, the people upon whom they exist to serve. Okay, quantitative, next page, please. In line with that, again, 80%, almost 80%, said that this program, PPMP, had helped them execute their day-to-day responsibilities. And that is evidenced later when you find that some people reported that when they went to forums that had to do with drafting, public policy, even at a national level, some were actually able to quote material directly from the PPMP program. In fact, I do remember one person from COG whose participation she was invited to, at least as an observer, should almost hear her colleague quoting verbatim items from PPMP, saying, now that, she could actually identify, now that is from something we learned during the program, even as this national process was going on. That is direct attribution, which is what we sought when we were doing this post-program assessment, impact assessment. So yes, 58% had attended public participation, and 55% of those made formal submissions. They would not have been able to make those formal submissions had they not had at least some kind of knowledge, some insights on how to make those submissions in the public forums. And yes, at least 71% of those said that the program actually informed those. Yes, again, attributing to the program process that CLIA got involved in, which is that regulatory reform process, there was a briefing sheet that was sent out by the CLIA program, which was aside from the PPMP program. And one of the reasons why we waited to have the post-PPMP assessment was precisely to let this participatory process happen. And we were able to, and happy to report that at least 65% of those people, found those clear guidelines on the reform process useful to them. So that also goes to show that the seamless collaboration or the seamless programming of the CLIA program also had something to speak. And remember, I don't know whether you're seeing the B line, the line of the process, which is captured in a one-pager here. I don't know how many of us have been fortunate enough to receive this program, this one-pager document. You'll see all the way from bottom left, not bottom left, just to the west there, from where the USAID came in, engaging the global communities, the baseline studies, counties baseline studies, then the PPMP genesis, and how that panned out all the way into the engaging of Strathmore, and then to PPMP, post-PPMP activities. And you can see for yourself the activities at the back of this one-pager brochure. You can already see from that whole engagement almost a seamless process that went in there. So CLIA was also very, very engaged and involved in this process. So another idea is that there's a strong understanding of the requirements. These are just some of them. There's lots of diagrams and descriptives from the detailed documents, some of which have been sent to you. You just need to click on the QR code and you'll see the report in detail. But among the other highlights, strong understanding of the requirements of devolved cooperative functions. A strong level of understanding of the link between gender and public policy. Now this we tested later about gender and public policy, and we realized stories from PPMP participants that were saying, we never knew what to do. We never knew how important these matters were, but upon attending PPMP, we really recognized the role and the purpose for seeing public policy and legislation through the gender lens. And out of that, a lot of activities, positive action was taken. One, they didn't even need to wait for any policy or law to be implemented. No, immediately they took action. They started involving women more, and they started actually taking active steps to even call upon, not just call upon, but require that their cooperatives, some of whom they oversee, to begin even including those constitutional requirements directly into their activities, into their rules, into their guidelines. So that's one very practical and very quick win that I must say I was very, very glad to witness. So a lot of them at least became gender aware all of a sudden. And they said they are straightforward. You just need to begin by getting the women and those marginalized, you know, especially the women and the young people onto the table. And I'm glad to say that a lot of them went ahead and did it. And then a strong ability to identify gender issues and gaps during the public policy making process. So as seeing things through the gender lens, that was very, very important and very key. Again, just to conclude, this is just concluding the highlights of the findings. There's that idea that says, okay, so what else do you need? And what was needed, even at quantitative level, some of those semi-structured questionnaires, they say there's still need for technical knowledge in drafting of cooperatives legislation, especially including on matters including women and youth. And that calls for, remember that mention I've talked about, obviously that calls for continued technical assistance. And I must say that this has gone ahead, and we are seeing the fruits of that based on all the reports we are hearing. Even as CLIA program comes to an end, I'll only ask, wow, where else can we go from here? So technical assistance is still required. I have a very brief, I would say, that is a graphic that captures about 5 other specific questions or learning areas or capacity areas that we inquired upon in the post-PPM process. One of them was understanding of the requirements of devolved cooperative functions. I think we mentioned the ability to customize their own country's cooperative legislation based on prevailing priorities. Number 3, level of knowledge. You may not see that, it's a bit microscopic, but the number 3 there, the small bar graph, is the level of knowledge in drafting cooperative legislation that is inclusive of women and youth, which I've just talked about. Then the level of understanding of the link between gender and public policy, which is what I've talked about, and ability to identify gender issues and gaps, which I've just spoken to about. Now you will notice that the scale we were looking for in terms of answering was from 1 to 5. So you'll see that the lowest ranked here, which is level of knowledge in drafting COP legislation that is inclusive of women and youth, is, this is in the knowledge that is post-PPM knowledge, is still ranking at almost 3.9 there out of 5. So that is 78%. Yeah. So still quite a high level of relevant in terms of amounts of capabilities. And of course, the highest there is the understanding of the requirements of the devolved cooperative functions at 4.2. That is about 84%. So a very narrow but high, you could say, spread. But that shows that a lot of EU participants are able to translate those capabilities across. Then the next one has to do with county goals achievement. If you could go to the next slide. Again, you'll see there, in terms of county goals achievement, there in in green is very little. 3 and 4 is what we are interested in. That is highly or very highly. And you'll see that combined, we have at least 45 plus about 20, which is about 58% achievement of county goals, which is, in policy drafting, being able to run all the other functions like audit and whatever other, registration of cooperatives and whatever other, duties that county level government is supposed to achieve when it comes to its goals in helping out in the county cooperatives agenda. So then we go to the personal objectives. I think I've mentioned those who are 80% personal learning objectives. I think we mentioned that. So very quickly, let's go to the qualitative findings. Again, as Martin has mentioned, these were semi-structured questions where you asked your opinions. So we took a bit of time, used some tools to do qualitative assessment where we look at sentiment that is most clearly captured. Now, I'll just mention some of those again, and the biggest of those is, as a training program, PPMP has delivered practical and actionable learning outcomes that have been numerously cited as useful. So time and time again, the participants said, yes, this program has been useful. It has been useful. We have used it. It was not theory. It was not hot air. At least those of us who attended were able to, despite being behind a screen, despite being in the middle of the street or being in the middle of another meeting, whatever happens, behind the screens of an online program, people are still able to really capture and retain a lot of what they found they can attribute directly to the program. Useful information. Policy formulation process and gender mainstreaming are two of the most impactful area of the TOT program. Again, we just asked, what are your most important areas from the TOT program? And of course, many of them said, we are now able to write a process. We understand the steps of the policy making program. And we understand the questions to ask in order for us to get help in legal drafting where we are not legal drafters by profession. So in other words, they move from unconscious ignorance to conscious ignorance. On the matters that they don't know, they're able at least to say, help us in this. We know what you want to do, so these are the areas where you need help in. And that's a very good place to be, okay? Gender mainstreaming, again, cannot be gainsaid. I mentioned that, again, in the quantitative aspect. Okay, one thing we mentioned, I think Martin Bayer, whom, if I may take a small parenthesis in the program and maybe just recognize him because I don't think anybody else will recognize this man. Can we give Martin a round of applause, please? I mean, Martin has been in this program from start to finish, all the way from when we were designing the program to him being the hands-on man, and you can see his role even today as the MC. He has walked through the programs every step of the way. So you recall that during the taught side of the program, you used to be asked to do a bit of homework, prioritize areas, put things into practice. What we realized was that when it came to ask specifically, do you recall what assignment you had? Most of you said, vaguely we do, but not quite. But when you asked, has anything else other than what you are asked to do for your graduation, has anything else been of service to you? You could see eyes lighting up. That's where it came to be. That's where most of you said, maybe not specifically when we were doing those assignments, but after, as it was happening, we now came to realize that applying this knowledge directly from what we were taught has been so live, has been so immediate. So even though not many of you picked on from your in-class assignments, you've gone ahead and actually picked up other relevant ideas, other relevant areas. And I can say there is actually ample evidence that in applying the principles learned from PPMT MPs, the counties that went through PPMP have a high chance of negotiating those challenges that are peculiar to that country. Especially stakeholder negotiation skills, conflict management, I think I've mentioned to those. Those were some of the most used, highly used skills. Again, this coming through, the need for technical assistance is very apparent generally. The need for technical assistance. Maybe there's one more item down there missing, but there we go. So it's also apparent that the demographic balance, this now things begin getting interesting, because from qualitative findings, we now see that the balance in leadership among the participants does not favor the young generation. This is one item that has come through time and time and time again. Watu wengi wanasema, it is good, it is high time that we brought onto the table the younger generation. And this also spoke to another question as to what do you think of the momentum within the cooperative sector? So a lot of you, people engaged, said, you know, youth favor innovation. There are new innovative ideas and innovative concepts and paradigms that need to come. And of course, directly linked to that has been what we have spoken through this morning about, and that is the worker cooperatives. It's one of the innovations that the younger people are very interested in. So it's actually youth-driven. It's driven by the population. So those are some of the things that they said. So a lot of you sort of decried, you know, and some of them were blunt, saying, listen, some of the cooperative officers are in no hurry to leave the stage. Because they are saying if they leave the stage, wataenda wapi, watakufa. And yet some of them are 70, 68, you know. Sorry? Cooperative officers, but also cooperators, not cooperative officers, not the government, not you. This, sorry. No, these are some of the findings of, sorry, thank you very much for giving me that correction. This now came from what are some of the challenges that you find moving forward within the cooperative function that you will use. What are some of the take-homes? Now I am at those take-homes which they found that they need to revamp the cooperative sector by bringing on board the youth and the younger generation. The other thing, of course, has to do with the political discourse, has an influence in priorities and policies. Yes, it's true. And hence, how do we solve that? We solve that by using the formal, constitutionally, you say, mandated processes to policy making and legal, and making of laws. Such that the policies outdate political mandates, right? So you don't have someone coming and, with their own ideas and saying, this is what you want actually to work with. Because I have been in this particular cooperative sector, these are the people I know, and this is what has to go, all laws and county laws and policies have to favor this particular area. Yes, that is important, but they can and should follow a more formal process and discourse. They still need for financial resources. A lot of you cooperative officers are still few. Work is increasing, and there is still need for more resources in terms of human capacity and also technical capacity, and of course financial capacity. The other one has been technological challenges and other sector-wide, you'd say, phenomena that still exist. I think someone mentioned the ICT, the IT technical abilities within the cooperatives are still missing. A lot of the cooperatives, now this is cooperative officers, this is you speaking to the industry again, not to the training. These are now some of the emerging issues. They say that from what we have learned, some of the future needs to address include some items to do with ICT. We need to modernize, and modernization is an agenda that still needs to be harnessed. The other things we've observed post-PPMP, again from qualitative study, we are just coming to an end, is that there's a lot of willingness already to harness from among other sector actors, space, cash, expertise. So, like I believe it's Kilifi, they're already using some of the larger cooperatives who are donating, or thanks to the cooperative officers within Kilifi, they are able to convince some of these larger cooperatives to host the other smaller cooperatives and forums to discuss and do meetings and workshops that are able to help in the sector. That already is, what we call the cooperation. I think one of the speakers spoke to this cooperation among the key actors. So again, worker cooperatives, I'll not mention that again. And then again, from the qualitative aspects, technical assistance still needed. And then finally, implementation and execution support and accountability mechanisms are needed. Now, we went to some places and we said, we asked some questions. Okay, are you confident that you are able to execute everything that you have mandated yourself to do? And they say there are still challenges. And some of the challenges are not just financial challenges. There are also challenges of the inertia that all of us as human beings have. We have the plans. I think when it comes to Kamau Solar, and some of the speakers said, we workshop a lot but don't do much. So there is that need for a mechanism that puts intent into action. So that's also something that is needed, and those mechanisms are required. So where those mechanisms, the nature of these mechanisms is varied, could be varied. It could be within you yourselves, finding accountability mechanisms to hold each other accountable, or getting even external support for people to come and help you just make sure that you're able to do what you have promised to do for the people. Finally, it is clear from evidence, technical, qualitative, quantitative, that the PPMP objectives, as envisaged in the CLEAR program, has have been achieved successfully. We can, without any fear or favor, state that PPMP did achieve its objective, and there are various happenstance proof area. And I'll give you just one particular area of that proof, and that is what I could call a natural experiment. Some of these post-PPMP activities that have been mentioned include some of the drafting workshop, the policy-making workshops, as clear personnel were going around and looking to people from different areas, especially where we had counties which took part in PPMP and those which didn't. It became quite clear that those who did not take part in PPMP, they were having a somewhat, or I don't know, some significant harder time to identify, to get, you say, to speed, so that they could articulate their issues and hence benefit from the technical assistance. Now, we did not set out to ask that question, but that is a very clear proof that we had a control group of people who didn't take part in the PPMP and who were also engaged in post-PPMP activities, and we were able to see that those people would really have benefited from PPMP. Obviously, they are all ours, and we have reached all of them up to 40, so we only have 40 counties that have not been reached, but it's a clear testament to what PPMP did achieve, and I would dare say, the fact that we have a different cohort, a different number of officers, a new crop of officers coming, there is still scope for having another round of PPMP program, given its real obvious, I would say, impact and meeting of its objectives. I want to stop there. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Tom. If I could take the participants back to class. You remember we went through theories. You remember there were about 8 different theories. How would you describe Tom? Which theory would you use to describe Tom? Anybody? Anybody? Do you remember a theory called rational choice theory? The economist who loved numbers. So he has given you a set of very clear statistics, and there was a second theory called political systems theory, from which we derive the policy process model. This actually demonstrates, based on a set of measurements done before, during, and after, that there was an impact of the program. And this is the kind of data that allows someone like Olga, someone like Pamela, and other actors from government, both at the county level and national government, to try and figure out how to drive change, guided by the data. Now, we've had a lot from the academicians. We've had a lot from the coordinators, the development actors. The next person I want to invite to speak to us will tell us whether this is all theory or whether practice is different. And I'll ask Madam Diana Kendi on behalf of Nyeri County to come over to the podium. Karibu sana. You help to demystify for all of us whether this is real or these are stories. Lunch, I noticed as I walked out, has already been served. The good news is we only have 2 panels later, actually 2 panels and 1 presentation. 1 presentation by the Council of Governors and 2 panels. And the panels are roughly 30 minutes. The Council of Governors one is about an hour. For the guests we have who are seated at the front, Marube, Madam Daisy B, I believe you'll be with us, and Professor, will you be with us the whole day, or you'll be leaving? Good, all of you will be there. Oh, you have a representative, good. So is it okay if we go for lunch and do the panel, the high-level panel afterwards, or do you prefer to do the panel in advance? I'll come and consult, and then when I come back, I'll give that advice. So this might either be our last session of the day, of the morning before lunch, or morning and afternoon, or else we'll go one more session, and then we'll go for lunch and finish with the last two. Madam Daisy, thank you for waiting, and tuambie ni ukweli ama ni uongo?
Thank you so much, MC, as you've been told. My name is Kendi Diana Tarichia, and I'm the CEC in charge of cooperatives, trade, culture, and tourism at the Great County. Good afternoon. I know I'm the one standing between us and lunch. Unless they that we continue, I will make it short. I had given a few slides, if they may project them, so it can guide my remarks today. And I'm very happy that we are here with the technical people, because it is, most of you are directors. How many of you are directors as they find my slides? Fantastic. So, thank you. I'm struggling to see over there. So I had been asked to speak about advocacy strategies towards county executive and county assembly approval. So what has happened? So I will speak from experience. Just some background information I can give you about ourselves or myself. I am on my 6th year, number 6th year, as CEC of cooperatives at the County Government of Nyeri. Before I was CEC, I was director at the County Government of Machakos. So I was in trade. And I have seen how we started out from 2013, where there was all this clamoring for power between governors, the national government, and so on. And now we have come to where we have agreed on some level of cooperation. And all I can say is that for us as leaders, to some extent, technical capability is very important. That is what sets you up for the job. However, past director and upward, there's another as I was saying, from director level upward, there is another skill that becomes very, very important. And that is, I can hear. Yes, politicking. Leadership, exactly. Because what is leadership? Leadership is really influence, isn't it? How you're able to persuade, how you're able to speak to people, how you're able to collaborate, how you're able to convince. And that's why I undertook the PPMP program. And if you asked me the most impactful training out of all those units that we did, one of them was negotiation. See, all of us we were in the same class. You are my classmates. One of them was negotiation. Understanding what does the other person want? What are the fears of the other person? Now, here we are. We know how to make policy. We know what we want. We want youth and women in cooperatives. We know we want good governance. We know we want all of these things. Now, how do we convince, right? How do we convince? Remember, cooperatives, number one, are member-run, they are member-owned. So it's not like it's an extension of the county government where we can just give directives and we are good to go. I know I have seen from the attendance list that there's a lot of us from very many different places. There are people from the coast, there are people from northern Kenya, there are people from the lakeside. And culture then becomes a very important influence as to how these policies that we are proposing are taken. So what have we done at the County Government of Nyeri? One, I would like to start by saying we are lucky in that the governor that we have in place has served as a cooperator. He was the head of teachers for a long time. He was in that cooperative. Our deputy governor right now, he jokes and tells me, I worked in Afya Sacco for as long as you've been alive. You know? So then it becomes very easy when you have a leader like that to convince them to fund cooperatives, to convince them that you need to attend this kind of trainings, to convince them, as we are facing wage bill challenges, we need to hire more staff, to convince them that you need vehicles to get to these cooperatives, to convince them all of these things. But then what do you do when your leaders are trained medical doctors, trained engineers, they were businessmen? You are the directors. So that's why I started by saying, as we go higher, then that quality or that skill of being able to persuade, to convince, to lobby, to advocate becomes so much more important than just the technical know-how. So how then do you, or have we, as the county government of Nyeri, taken opportunities to sensitize? Because as long as somebody doesn't know the value of something, forget about funding, forget about staffing, forget about all of those things. One, we've taken any opportunity to sensitize our people, to sensitize my colleagues in cabinet, for example, to sensitize the general public, institutions of higher learning, and even the population themselves on the importance of cooperatives. So then that becomes very, very important. I know there's another thing that we need to work with. And this is where I say, sometimes we leave politics to the governor and the deputy governor, kidogo CEC. But all of us need to be in there. Because you know, the one other thing that is there, there's people called MCAs. And those are politicians. And now, I'll give you an example of Nyeri, for example. We see this cooperative is not going too well. We see these people have overrun their term. We need to do an election. We want to do this and that. But the chairman of that cooperative is the brother to the MCA. Sawa. Now MCAs will also be eager to remind you, as a CEC, they can call you to explain yourself at the assembly. And they can even impeach you. Sawa. See, these are the politics we are dealing with. At least for directors, most of you are permanent and pensionable, so probably that's not an issue for you. But this is an issue for chief officers, it is an issue for CECs. Even at the national level, by the way, I wish the people from the state department were here. These are some of the pressures, I would guess, even the permanent secretaries deal with, and the cabinet secretaries. MP amekuja kwa ofisi yako anakuambia, yule mtu anaiba pesa. Umefanya uchunguzi wako, you know it is probably not true. But what do you do? Yeah? So that level of capacity building to know how do we then engage? How do we make this work? Yeah? I have talked of holding, I'll move to the next point, of holding regular forums and workshops with the executive and the assembly. And this is why I was posing that question to you. One of the strategies we've employed successfully is sometimes we do forums, public forums. Munaita watu cooperators, munaita viongozi wote, watu, banks, nani, and then you call MCAs. And you call the executive. And then the people talk from there, you as the executive and the assembly, you are here. So that also the understanding of the MCAs, of the challenges that you're facing, are clear. And I can assure you one thing, and I have seen this to work. There is no politician who wants to appear bad in front of their people. There is no politician who will stand here and say, you can't remove Kamau because Kamau is my brother. He'll not stand in front of people and say that. So your strategy here is, kikiumana kabisa, na you know you're right, enda kwa raia. You say, we are doing a sensitization, or we are doing a forum. Then say, okay, what are your problems? They will tell you what their problems are. Hata hii cooperative yetu, kuna pesa ilipotea. Sasa mheshimiwa unaona tufanye aje? Si yako hapo hata yeye.
So these are some of the ways that we can ensure that, one, all of us as stakeholders, we are clear on what the challenges are, because also MCAs who come into office, they are rational people, they are smart people. You're not just a mtu bure hivyo to become an MCA. These are people with some level of intelligence, and high level at that. That is what I have seen in Nyeri County. So if they are able then to understand what the challenges kwa ground iko. Unajua saa ingine wanategemea wale masapota wao wanawavotia who go to tell them stories. And you know those people know how to convince you. If they come to you, you will think the world is ending tomorrow. Aki, kesho watu wanataka kuandamana, and all these stories they give us. So if the MCAs have that level of understanding from the people, listening to as many people as possible, then they are also able to help us to make the correct decisions. There is the issue of provision of sufficient technical support and materials to the assembly and the executive. This is just what I was talking about. How often do we report back? If you're a director, how often do you report back to your chief officer, to your CEC? How often do these reports go to the governor? How often do you just get forums to discuss with the assembly and the people kabla mambo iharibike? Because if we always wait for mambo iharibike, that is where we start now having a lot of commotion. So if we are able to provide the technical support, and we are thankful to global communities and others, you've been able to give us valuable, correct information on governance of these cooperatives. I would also add, a lot of times we get, you lay that, like for myself, I'll say like the PS said earlier here, when I came to Nyeri County, my experience was in trade and economic planning. But then, my governor thought, rightfully so, cooperatives is a business. Cooperatives in a lot of counties is in agriculture. But now when they stay in agriculture, what happens to the matatu circles? What happens to the circles as we know them? What happens to the housing circles? Now we are talking about worker cooperatives. What then happens to those? So that's why it was moved to trade. But mnasikia, yours truly, my main training is in trade. Kutoka shule. Now I get there, I find few cooperative officers. I thank God they had the patience, just like Olga and PS Kiburi, the patience to take me through the issues. And you know, for how many of you are fairly new, like less than 1 year old in the office? Okay, nitawaibia siri. That is the time you'll get the most visitors. Kwa sababu sasa wanajua we haujui. Kuja kuambia wale watu walikuwa nataka kutumaliza. Aki waziri tunashukuru Mungu ni wewe umekuja. Are those not the stories they tell you? So you also have to exercise some level of restraint and probably wisdom when you're engaging with this. There are those who will tell you the truth, but to filter. Na watakwambia kwanza yule ofisa wako, my director of cooperatives is here, is called Theuri. Huyo Theuri, nadhani wanapewa pesa na hao watu. Those are the stories they'll come and give you about your stuff. Yeah? So we also need to be well aware and to look out for this kind of challenges. So be a good student if you're new. For us, actually, we didn't do anything new until I think year 3. That's when we started working on our cooperative policy after the national one was delaying. So we had enough time to take stock, to consult widely, so that you don't also start coming with interventions that instead of improving the sector, it becomes chaotic. We have seen this happen even sometimes at the national level. I think the last time there was a conversation around requiring all coffee cooperatives to value add before exporting. And this was a member-sponsored bill in Parliament. But now, I think after I consulted a bit on coffee, and those of you who know the coffee sector, it's not really something that would work very well. Because once, say, you roast your coffee here, by the time it gets to the US in 45 days, what has happened? It has lost the aroma, probably lost some of the taste. So let's be slow. You'd rather be slow to legislate than to legislate too quickly, and then you're introducing more chaos to the sector than you are correcting the problems that are there. So then that takes me through that part of provision of sufficient technical support, and to make sure that it takes care of the gaps that are already there. But more so, a lot of times we are focused on the challenges, dealing with the challenges. Sometimes when you focus on the opportunities, you obliterate the challenges. Kuna ile kitambo tulikuwa tunaenda bank unaandikiwa balances, nasikia hivyo ndio ilikuwa kitambo, like kitambo sana, like in the 80s and stuff. See, they used to do ledgers, and they'd have to close early to do. Now there was a lot of money that was lost, maybe here, there, because, you know, human beings can make those kind of mistakes. And sometimes it's just outright corruption. But then what happened? When technology came, we didn't need to figure out a law to deal with these people. Automatically, that problem went away. So ask yourself, is there something maybe you can introduce that is useful, that takes you away from focusing on challenges to embracing opportunities? As the PS said, we are on the verge of a new world. And, you know, we are now saying, hey, fuel prices, wapunguze, wapeane subsidy. But probably, this is the verge of a new world where we stop using fuel. Maybe. And we stop using fuel, sorts out our climate crisis that we are in now, saves us some money in our pockets, ensures all these problems that we have with our climate change are gone. So let's ask ourselves, could we use cooperatives to reset? Yeah. And lastly, I said I'm the one standing between you and your lunch, so I would like to finish this one quickly. I'd like to talk about the provision of regular reports on the implementation of the developed policies and legislation. And PPMP, thank you very much. We came to school, we learned, you asked us what we learned, how we applied what we learned, and we have seen the gaps. Those are reports you're giving us to tell us what is our report card. How have we done in the implementation of these policies? Have they, most importantly, have they been effective? Kwa saa ingine tunafanya tu, tunasema okay, tumefanya, tunaeka pale. Tunafanya launch, tunaita media, tuko hapo, tumefanya. But what is the impact of these policies and legislation that we have done? Ladies and gentlemen, the last thing I would wish to leave you with is what I believe is the solution to all the problems that we have. And that is us going back to self-reflection, to our own values, to ask yourself, as you do your work there as a director, as you do your work there as a CEC, are you true to your own values? Ukikaa ukienda nyumbani jioni ukikaa hivi ukifikiria ukiongea na Mungu wako, do you think you have really served your country to the best of your ability and the best of your knowledge? Ama ulipo 5,000 tu, you know these guys are good at managing us. I'm finishing MC. Immediately you arrive, whether you're a politician or you are us. Hey, waziri karibu sana. Hata tuko na kitu hapa unaweza pelekea watoto. You know now, after that, you're already biased. Na hawakuambii kwa nini wanakupea. PS told us here what they were told by the ambassador of Japan. Hakuna cha bure. Si ni kweli? So let us all try and pray that we stick to the values, to serve this country to the best of our ability. Na ukiona imeshindikana kabisa, brothers and sisters, I do plead. Kabla tukuje kukuchangia, unajua mambo ikiharibika, si wale wakubwa wanaangukanga. Lazima kuna mtu ataanguka. Si ndio? It better not be you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Kendi. Another round of applause. Now, I want to make a humble request. If you'll just give me 30 minutes, it'll allow for a more relaxed lunch, but I want us to take advantage of the high-level speakers we had earlier because they are all here. And 30 minutes, it's a panel conversation, but we had left it open-ended. I will aim to make it interactive. And I'll flip by getting questions from you for the panel right at the outset. And I promise to keep it to 30 minutes. Are you okay with that? You okay with that? Thank you. So without further ado, because they are here with us, I'll request Madam Daisy B to join us on behalf of the President's Economic Transformation Office. Karibu. I will request Professor Isaac Nyamungo also to join us. Karibu sana. I believe we had Bwana Marube, or he has left. Yeah, he's still here with us. Is Bwana Wanjohi still with us? I think these are the three from the morning session. Have I missed anybody? And Olga is also here with us on behalf of Global Communities. You're on the panel. Karibu, Olga. Then Bwana Kimani Tom, because you presented such good insights on behalf of S. You have the technical details. I will be the moderator. Karibu sana. And so how we'll structure this, why don't we make it a conversation so that right from the word go, I can have the panel think about issues that are of importance to you. And I have a mic here. I'll request one member from the team to circulate this. Mandela, or okay, there's actually one here with Kevin. Kevin, you can have to, we'll share some. And then we'll just go around with one. Okay. We'll share on that side. So how we'll approach this, Kevin, if you don't mind, you go to that side. If you have either a question, actually let me limit it to questions. I'll take 3 questions from the panel, right from the word go for the panel. Something you'd like them to on, something they said this morning that you would like them to react to, or something that you feel has not been addressed and was of importance. And I'll go with the first 3 hands to be raised. If there are no hands, if there are no questions, I'll immediately start with the panel and then I'll come back to you. This is to make it interactive right from the word go. Is there any question? Is there something important you felt was not touched on that you'd like the panel? Okay, there's one there. Kevin. And if you don't mind, you'll introduce yourself, the name and the county, and then the question. We keep the questions brief so that we can recoup time. Karibu.
Thank you. This is Mohamed Hilole, Chief Cooperative Officer from Mandera County. Something that was touched by Mr. Kizito on the aggregation centers that are currently being launched in all over the country. And I would like to direct it to Madam Daisy from the President's advisors team. Now, with regards to these aggregation centers, but there's something that Mr. Kizito said, if there's an interconnect or if there's a discussion going on how to take up the aggregation centers or services. Because in Mandera, we had some work with the WFP where cooperatives have been selected, several cooperatives as centers of excellence. And we have aggregation centers from that, where some of the cooperatives have been selected to act as aggregation centers to basically collect all the produce together, and then the off-takers would be WFP, Now we have this other parallel program by the national government now, the aggregation centers, county aggregation centers being launched. So who is now going to take now the role to make sure those two services that are very excellent, they go together and we have some synergy working on that? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much from Mandera County. So Madam B, this question of, I'll almost frame it as duplication, and the rest of the panel can also weigh in. Could I get maybe one? Okay, there's a question to my left here, another question at the front. You all have your pens, and so it's okay, you can just write, okay. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Frederick Koske from Bomet County. My question is on the policy and also the bill, which some counties are ahead of the national government. What now will happen when the counties pass the policy and the bill, and maybe when it goes to the National Assembly, there are some major changes, although we have the model county cooperative policy and also the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Bwana Kosgei. So a question of innovation and policy. One is leading, the other is lagging. How do you navigate? There's a question at the back, but there's a question here at the front also.
My name is Patrick Mbateng from Nora County. I have two concerns. You find in most of the time the government make a budget, and you find all the money and the projects are taken to agriculture. And it is our desire that if it is possible, the projects also to be channeled through the cooperative, so that, because we are only giving out the services, but we are not giving some, we don't have some money being linked to our department, so that the project can be used in our department. Secondly, if it is possible for the government, it is also good that when it is making a budget, then it make also a budget to the cooperative to start the same projects. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There's one at the back. It's okay, Kevin, let me take that one, and then I'll take two from there. The gentleman at the front, the lady at the back. I think this allows us to address pertinent issues rather than having it as a theoretical panel. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Samuel Wambisa, County Director of Cooperatives, Seya County. I just have one or two issues I wanted to raise. I wish the Bwana PS was here. There's the issue of the cooperative bill. It's long overdue. It's long overdue, and it's a bit disheartening when you hear that it's yet even to be forwarded to the cabinet. It will be forwarded to the cabinet, it goes to parliament, and it's holding us back. How I wish that the bill could be fast-tracked so that it becomes law and it gives a clear direction. That is one. Two, I want to thank the global communities and the CLEAR program for the training and the legislations that were enacted. My request is, in the next program, is it possible if you could do some technical training for counties? The reason why I'm saying this, we have so many of our officers who are retiring and new ones are coming in. There is a technical gap. So if you could kindly consider that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let me get some from this side. I promise we'll try and come back. Kevin, we can start here at the front. And then there was the gentleman in the checkered shirt and the lady there. Right there.
Good afternoon. My name is Daiba Hassan, Director of Cooperative Wajir County. Mine is a concern. We have been informed that there are some counties, around 25 counties, have gone through the PPMP, while others still have not gone through. Some staffs are trained. I'm just asking, what is the fate of those counties that have not been trained? Is there a chance of them getting training?
Thank you for that. I think two more questions there. And how I'll go is we'll just go sequentially. Whatever stood out for you, you can respond. I think that'll allow me to get one more round of questions in. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Talina Rapkwech from Director Cooperatives, Nandi County. I have only one concern. I was very much impressed by the presentation by the university about the solar. Most of our people or cooperatives that are coming from very far-flung areas where the connectivity or infrastructure is not there. And now that it's becoming more expensive, how can we partner with the university so that at least they can also come and give us the way they have told us they are actually working here about the solar system? I think if we could really partner with that, I think we'll be saving a lot in terms of expenses, and with that, we'll be going for the cheaper energy for our people. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that's a question, Tom, you can take to Kamau Asola, even if you may not be able to address it. Yeah, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone, again. My name is Rose Mutuku, CCM Kitui County, in charge of trade, industry, MSMEs, and cooperatives. My question will go more to Mr. Marube, and maybe also to Daisy. One, we are seeing a lot of trust issues around cooperatives, especially after elections, also with the members not trusting the officials that they have already elected. These trust issues are causing some cooperatives having a lot of squabbles. One, as the CEC office in charge of cooperatives, maybe we need to be guided, because I'm not seeing any clear policy within the government how to deal with that. We need to be guided around that, because they all end up in your office, and then again, you are not sure what to refer to. What powers do we have as CECs? Because even if I go into the Cooperative Act, I'm not seeing anything to do with that. On the second issue that I'll raise here is, again, and I think one of my colleagues have alluded to that. You find that cooperatives in this country don't have money, especially these new cooperatives that are coming up, especially in areas that were marginalized before, or areas that do not have very strong agricultural value chains that are able to generate funds. So most of these cooperatives, maybe you find is a cooperative, I'll give us maybe a cooperative in Kitui that is purportedly doing dengue as a business. But however, whatever business activities they are doing, they are not generating enough. And actually, I can say it's not very well structured. My question is this, and this goes to Daisy. What are we doing as a deliberate move by the government to ensure that we support the cooperatives, especially from the marginalized areas, or the ASAL areas, or areas that do not have very strong structured commercial activities, to enable them move to the next level? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Allow me to get a first round of responses, and we'll come back for one more round, and I'll include my question there. Professor Isaac, why don't I have you go first, and then that'll give Daisy, Madam Daisy, and also Bwana Nyamunge, enough time just to think through, Marube, enough time to think through and get a response. So over to you, Professor, and then I'll come to Madam Daisy, Bwana Marube, and then I'll come to Olga and finish off with Tom. Over to you.
Thank you. I think that is very strategic, because you know many questions were not directed to me. So but perhaps I would go with the concern from Mohammed, Mandera County. And this is in regard to the issue of aggregation centers. It may concern you that at the Cooperative University right now, we have a program that we are actually managing that is supported by the African Development Bank. And the whole idea of that program is to support this particular activity. And what we are doing right now is that working at the Lord Egerton Industrial Park, together with the county government of Nakuru, the county government of Baringo, the county government of Narok, and recently we have been talking about whether to also involve the county government of Nyandarua. We are working in 3 value chains, that is dairy, maize, and Irish potatoes. And the whole idea is to have these, aggregation centers that are also able to link farmers, not just to markets, but also to input suppliers, so as to bring down the cost of production. So this is something that we are engaged in as an institution, and it's a program that is, as I've indicated, supported by the African Development Bank. Part of what we want to do within this program is to set up a data center, and that will be able to, harvest data from the counties, but also data in terms of, climate and other things that farmers can, hook onto in order to be able to make informed decisions. So that's something we are working on, and the whole idea is once we perfect this process, because we are in the pilot phase, perhaps then we will be able to expand this to other counties. In terms of, I know this was directed to Marube and Daisy, but the issue of trust around cooperatives, I think this is something that as a movement we need to address. What is it that can be done? I think this is where we will probably need to come in terms of institutions to be able to do training around issues of management, because sometimes when there's no trust, then you will start seeing performance going down. But also related to issue of areas that are marginal. When we think about agricultural, activities, there is a tendency for us to think about tea, to think about dairy, to think about coffee. In some of the marginal areas, for example, can we make Kitui County, as I'm taking this as an example, as an area in which we can do poultry farming? You don't need pasture. What you need are just supplies. Can we make Kitui County, for example, as an area where we can get honey? So it doesn't have to be the main. Can we be known for something? And I think that's why the government is talking about anchor, chains within each of the different counties. This morning I was just sharing with Marube, and this is my last comment. I was just sharing with Marube. When the war broke out between Russia and Ukraine, everybody was talking about wheat. And we had countries that took action, like Ethiopia, which was a net import of wheat. As we speak today, in June, the minister in charge of agriculture in Ethiopia was presenting to IGAD ministers. And what came out is that within that period, Ethiopia as a country came up with a Marshall Plan. Ethiopia is not only wheat sufficient, they are actually now a net exporter of wheat. Is there something we can borrow as a country? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Madam Daisy B., there are several things that have been raised for national government. You currently sit in an advisory role, and before that, you are operating in a county role. So I think you're quite well equipped to address many of the issues that were raised. Over to you.
Okay, thank you. Let me start with the Mandera, and that is where Prof left. The question they have asked about aggregation. Let me start by saying that seated in this hall, can you count yourself as one of the important actors in changing the economy of this country? Because the current government is actually anchoring its agenda in the cooperative level. And where the cooperative level is at the counties, and you are the key actors. So I want you to consider that. That is a mind shift that you're talking about when you talk about transformation. So when it comes to issues that deal with counties and aggregation centers and all that, the government is focusing so much on how members at the bottom of the pyramid are going to be supported and how we can reach them. And the government have come up with a model whereby we are going to aggregate ourselves and our activities at that cooperative level so that you can be reached, so that members of the societies are reached, so that the poor, the vulnerable are reached. There is no other way we are going to reach them apart from the aggregation that they are going to have. They can be aggregated in groups, they can be aggregated in those CBOs or whatever, but we want to bring them at a better level because we know cooperative are institutions which are managed well. They is governed by the law. We have it anchored in our CAP 490. So we know with the aggregation of these vulnerable people, of these low income earning people, we know they'll be well guided. So the aggregation centers that have already existed are the ones that we are supporting. And I want to appreciate the work done by partnership that we have with either stakeholders within our country and even outside, because most of them might have come and do that. And also we are looking at industries, we are looking at the off-takers like you have mentioned, because we want to aggregate these members of the society into cooperative. When it comes to production, they produce together. They bring together because they have a collective bargaining. So with this production that they have, we want to see a way of making it more profitable than ever before. We've heard from Waziri Nyeri talking about before cooperatives were running as just collective of friends and maybe one particular value chain. We are looking at how we are going to bring them around so that it can make an economic impact. So we are looking at the production or the beginning of the chain until the end. And that's why the Mandera CEO was talking about the off-taker. While addressing the production level of the producer cooperative society, for example, we are also looking at what do they need at that level. So when they aggregate, how easy can we reach them? That's why you're seeing the government so much rushing into supporting these aggregators with inputs. And I know you've heard about the fertilizer subsidy that was done. And that is one of the inputs that we can really focus on. The first time it was done at the NCBB, but we saw it might not have been efficient. And the second phase now we are advocating for, can we have this point at the cooperative level so that farmers can access the service that they are on reach. So that when they produce, when we go build their capacity, we find them in one place. When we go add value, we can support them with all the value-adding equipments or support that they might need at that aggregation level. So that when it comes to marketing, it will be easy for us to look for a market because they are bulk there, whatever they have. Same as the SACCOs. The SACCOs are not left out of this. We want to ensure that we build the capacity of the SACCOs because cooperative can never run without finance. So we are looking at the ward level. Actually, our focus is mainly on the ward level. That is the end state model that you are focusing on, whereby we have established the cooperatives, we have aggregated the members, and they are doing something. Now, at the ward level, they can have a SACCO that is strong, or maybe this cooperative society can be linked to a financial institution. We know we have so many financial programs, so many financial institutions giving them finances. We want to see that linkage. And it would be so possible and easy for one to be linked and accessed so long as he's a member of a society. So when it comes to off-taking, we are moving into a transformation stage whereby we are talking to the off-takers, and I know this has happened especially in cotton value chain. We are working with Rivertex so that the members of the cooperative on cotton have written an agreement with the off-taker. So that this time round, the farmer will not just produce the lint. They will produce the lint, and know the off-taker who is coming to pick their cotton. And at that level, these off-takers should know whatever they have taken belongs to the society. So we also go for the seed cake that is remaining. You know the lint, but there is also a seed cake where we can press and get oil. Why is traditionally farmers has been selling that to somebody who didn't know how much can you go to hire a land to buy the seed. But this time we want the return to go back to the owner, who is the farmer. So when looking at analyzing the entire value chain, we are talking to the producers, we talk to the actors, and even the off-takers, so that we see at least the person who gets the higher return is the owner of the copper, is the owner of that cotton, is the planter, or the owner of that land, the person who knows how much fertilizer costs, how much that seedling costs. So those are the support that the government is willing to support, and I'm grateful for that. So when it comes to aggregation, I don't think there is any competition. Cooperative is an independent body. They can aggregate at their own level. We are not going to push any, but we are saying those who have aggregated and they are ready to be supported are the ones that you are going to get there and work with them on this journey. So that one is done, and I want to talk about now the question on, you've talked about the marginalized areas. On the agenda that you're talking about, the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, we are looking at the entire country. And before this came around, there was a plan, which was the President Manifesto. He went around this country and he had some consultative forums with the members of the 47 counties. The members of the 47 counties prioritize several value chains. And the approach that was taken was to sit with and synthesize whatever it was brought forward and see the best way how they could address those challenges that members of every county raise. So most of it, because I talked in the morning about, we are going to take a value chain approach kind of, and you are going to focus that so that others can come as supporters of the chain. So there is no county that doesn't have a priority value chain. We have them. But one step that you're going to take is to organize those members of that society into cooperatives. That is the best way we can do. And I know you as cooperators, you know, how are we going to approach these farmers? How are they going to get the technical assistance that you want to give? How are they going to get finance? It is only after they aggregate. So if it is honey in Kitui, we are going to look at those honey farmers, or even the sunflower farmers in Kitui, or women that maybe have formed, and we're prioritizing the value chain of edible oils, because we know currently mafuta ya kupika is an issue in Kenya. You know that we are importing more, and you know this government, we are trying so much to reduce on imports and increase on exports. You are looking at how we are going to focus on improving what we can produce. So when it comes to marginalized areas, all the counties are mapped, and I think we have the charters in place, which we have priority value chains. We are going to aggregate those members into cooperatives. So members here, be ready for your count. After they have been aggregated, we are going to support them to aggregate their produce and support them in value adding. Could it be equipments or infrastructures that support chilling or cooling or warehouse receipting when it comes to maize, or drying? So long as it's a value chain activity that can prolong their produce so that it can reach to the market, or add value so that it can give it more value, and support them also to see what is available for them in the market. Because we want to have an environment which is working without a seamless kind of economic environment at that level, at the village level. So most of them, we are going to link others with TVETs. I know you've heard about the Technical Vocational Training Institute. These TVETs are already existing in our country, but we have never gotten used to utilize whatever they have. In every county, I know you will never lack a TVET, but this time you are linking them. Same as the MSMEs, we have the small, medium, micro enterprises at those counties. Maybe you will think this is an ASAL country, but we are going, the PS talked in the morning about leather. How much do we import from outside? Yet we know that whenever we kill an animal and celebrate the goats, we throw away the skin. Nobody has ever aggregated that leather, and we can produce over 40 million shoes in Kenya, of which we are importing right now. So we are going to stimulate such kind of activities and economic agendas through the cooperative. We are going to have worker cooperative, and this worker cooperative, we make sure that they can access finance, just the way that you've established the Hustler Fund and other funds, women enterprise funds that have been re-engineered, that are easily accessible. You can access those funds on your phone. And you can go to your bank, you can go to your circle and access those funds. Once we have facilitated or financed such kind of value chains, the process will move. And the optimal thing is we want to increase the income of that farmer or of that member of the cooperative society or of that person in the circle or of the border, any kind of medium and small enterprise. We are going to aggregate them, link them to a circle, link them to a financial provider, ensure that at least finance is available, because that is what has been lacking for the longest time. When it comes to governance, so that I don't waste time, Prof, I've talked very well about governance in cooperative. It's been a very sickening thing, but I don't know how much you have done it. When we talk about transformation, let's transform this time for the good. And transformation is not the way we were doing things in 1960. We were talking about the law right now, about nothing has changed. Since that time, I don't know, the bylaws that we're still referring to was in, is it 2 or 3? And now we are talking about, somebody have just said very well, I think it was you, that the laws will run after the sector because the sector is already moving very fast. There are so many things that you have not changed, and things have already changed. Look at digitization. I think Waziri have said very well, the way we used to queue in the bank. Do you queue nowadays? So why are we allowing side things to go ahead of us? We need to move together. So when it comes to cooperative, we are going to ensure that digitization has been done, systems are running. It will reduce a lot of governance issues. We ensure that capacity building is done. And real capacity building for the board. There are also governance institution strengthening that includes formation of committees, you know that? So that every committee will be liable for the decisions they make. We are going to incorporate and ensure that technical assistance is available at the ward level. I'm very sure most of the counties which are here, if I tell you to put up your hands, if you have staff, technical staff at the ward level, very few will do that. Can we do that? Do we have county cooperative staff at the ward level? Raise your hand if you do. Which county? Yes, I know Bomet you do. Which other county? Nyeri. Out of Narrow County, out of the 47 counties, there are no staff at the ward level. And these are the cooperatives you are expecting to re-engineer the economy of this country. Who is there to give them the technical advice? Who is there to train them? Who is there to support them develop business plan and strategic plans? Because we are running this as a business this time round. We are not aggregating for us to do chamas and take tea and do that. It is an economic empowerment move. So we need to inculcate such kind of activities in our cooperative so that we strengthen and reduce the issues on governance. Last but not least, issues on governance. You have heard about President Economic Transformation advocating of one-word cooperative model, because we look at so many aspects of economic empowerment. And you have seen that there are so many activities that are happening to one farmer in that one word. So he's a member of a SACCO, he's a member of a boda, he's a member of a dairy, he's a member of cotton, he's a member of sunflower. So why don't we aggregate all of them to come as individual members without destroying the initial structures of the cooperative, so that we can reach them so easily, so that we can link them to health facilities, so that they can easily be connected to a health service provider at that level. Link them to a facility that has all the services that give them. They can as well assess facilities on health, on other issues that chronic issues that they may have, so that they don't use their capital that they could be using in their business or as their capital in treating themselves. So we are looking at those kind of areas, and I know it's working, and I just want you to be open. I want you to transform our thinking and embrace what is really coming. It is working, and it is making it easy. So let's do it, and I know we are going to have a very robust and a very reliable development agenda in this country. We are going to change this country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam B. You have touched on a systemic approach, whereas Prof talked about moving from policy to implementation. I'll invite Bwana Marube. And Olga, when you make your remarks, there's a lady who's seated somewhere near the door, I think, who holds a very special place in your heart in the cooperative movement. I will want you to recognize her in your remarks. And in the next round of questions, I'll ask her just to tell us who she is and elaborate on why she's important to the cooperative movement. Olga, is that okay? I'll point out exactly who. Okay, Bwana Marube.
Thank you. Muko ama mumelala? Very good. I will be brief, very short answers. And I will touch almost all issues regarding to the bills, regulations, governance, so that, and I will touch on issues that Madam Rose has raised without any specific order. Okay. On issues of aggregation, the President has put it very clear. The government is putting structures which would be managed by cooperatives. So if you are organized, those centers, aggregation centers, are ours. In fact, including markets, including the big markets which are being built by the government. At the end of the day, every participant in that market are going to form cooperatives, and then they will cooperatives, their cooperative they will form, will run their market. So it is, the government is facilitating to make our lives easier. Is that not a very short answer? Very short. Let me go to the bill. None of you is most troubled about the bill than I am. Because 80% of my job evaluation at the end of the year, that takes about 80% of my work. The previous government, we pushed the cabinet and they signed the cabinet memo to go to parliament. But our bill was late and parliament was dissolved. The new government could not continue with bills which were left in the middle. All right? So we had to retrieve it, have discussions with the current government, which we found had good intentions for cooperatives, so that they can own it. The new government had to own it. We had two options: to completely reject it and start afresh from where we were 10 years, or persuade them with the evidence that we had done public participation so that they can own it and move forward from where it was. Our CS was very kind to take that option. The cabinet went to a retreat. Our paper, which we had really prayed for to go through, was thrown back to the Council of Governors to see whether the new governors who have come can accept the bill as it is to proceed. We got funding from the cooperative movement. We went to Mombasa with the Committee of Council Governors on Cooperatives, Trade, and also we took the Senate. We had a joint meeting for 4 days or thereabout to persuade them, and took them through the bill and gave evidence about public what? Without that public participation, nothing moves. With evidence that the former Council of Governors had approved it. So we got some concurrence. When we prepared this new CS and the PS, we were ready to move. We came in with another new issue of coffee. There was a coffee bill. The question was, we were in Nyeri. No, Meru. How many of you were in Meru during the coffee conference? The question was, where does coffee belong? Do we give it to the Ministry of Trade? Do we leave it with agriculture? Or the farmers would benefit most if coffee is under who? Cooperatives. So then again, there we were lobbying the whole night. We managed to pull that let coffee from the moment it is harvested be left in the hands of the cooperatives. And the cooperatives then are our bill was already going to Parliament. So in the wisdom that we got from the other side is that let the two bills be merged and be taken to Parliament together so that the coffee bill makes reference to the cooperative bill. So that the coffee bill is not isolated. The management, the governance of coffee should be in tandem with the spirit and the regulations that will be developed under the bill, under the National Cooperative Bill 2023. So there was a bit of delay. My friend was worried why the delay. And I was very happy. We have done several meetings. We met at the DP's office with members of Parliament and the Senate. We've dealt with it. A smaller team went to Mombasa. They have gone through it. We have harmonized. The cabinet memo has been signed. In the next cabinet meeting, our bill will be discussed, passed, and sent to Parliament because the members of Parliament, the committees of Parliament and Senate have agreed on the issues contained therein. So we are praying that in the next sitting, it will go through, go to Parliament. We have been given an assurance by the majority of the House that by November it will be an act of Parliament. That time you will see my beards growing because now things are done. Now, what is the next challenge? Is that we have not started doing the regulations because we are foreseeing a few amendments when it goes to the floor of Parliament. We have about three issues. Number one, people are complaining, how do we, politicians want it to be seen to be good to the youth and the women who are the majority, isn't it? They want us to enact, to bring something on education, term of service, and age. But as a movement, we have said we cannot put into law because you are going to discriminate people because of age. All right? Or education. But we know we are transforming, we are changing, everything is going digital. How do we then harmonize, bring some balance? So we are hoping that those issues of age, term limit within which the chairman serves, not the board, we are recommending that the board chairman can serve 2 terms, all right? But then can remain in the board without being the chairman. So we want the issue of chairmanship, not board member, to be looked at. Youth and women, we are encouraging youth to form cooperatives so that they can be able to get into it. You cannot invite youth to come into a cooperative unless you are a member, isn't it? Elections is a member. This is a member-based thing, it's a club. So unless you are a member, you cannot be elected as even if you are a youth. You have to be part of the membership of that cooperative to be elected. The same case with women. Even the government has had issues of 1/3 gender. But through affirmative action and training, member training, and you, because the directors, you are the ones who supervise the elections. Please ensure that during that time, you are advocating for more women and youth at that particular moment. Now, we are talking about governance. The issues of governance have been dealt very well in the bill, and they will be operationalized in the regulations. And remember, regulations must go through Parliament as well, isn't it? The issues we don't want to be put in the Act, we want them to be more explained in the regulations. So a team will be formed to deal with regulations, and there will be public participation, because that document must also go through Parliament. Now, the question is, some counties you have gone very far. What do you do? What you have done is a job well done. You may be 70, 80% will be contained in the regulations which will pass through Parliament. And assuming that there will be no more additions in the bill. So what will happen is that we want to fast track the moment it goes to Parliament, that a team be gazetted to do regulations, and when we call upon you for public participation, please come so that we quickly have a document ready. That would address the issues of governance, will give the CCC more powers, so that, Madam Rose, when you have issues of a cooperative in your county, you have the mandate, you have the hammer to call them onto your office. If the board, the management, they are not in agreement, you have the powers to call a special AGM and throw away the entire board and do a re-election. You have the powers to do that. You can do audit. You are allowed to sit in every cooperative society when they are having their board meetings, so that you can give guidance and also understand where the challenges is. Challenges are not in cooperatives. It's the people. The problem is the people fighting for leadership. All right? So we need to see then how can we be able to deal with those issues at the county levels. The national government has very little to deal with those issues that you have. You are going to audit their books. You can order for a special AGM. You attend all the AGMs. You will be the one dealing with elections. So if there were wrong people elected and you were the one supervising elections and advising them, then that's where we need to help in terms of capacity building. Lastly, from last year we have started having an annual meeting for the CS. This year it will be again in Naivasha from the 7th to 10th. We have a scorecard. We have issues that we wanted the government to do. And one of them is the policy and the bill and the regulation. We will be putting the minister and the CS and the commissioner to give us why they have not delivered, because we had timelines. We had timelines on so many issues which we can, it's a whole booklet which we can be able to share. So we will invite you to come to that meeting. It's important because the more we raise those issues, the better it is. Because we will come up with an action plan. If there are issues that requires the Council of Governors, will be put in. If we want more funding for the cooperatives in our counties, those are the issues that will be brought in. They will be escalated so that they can be addressed. Kindly, if you have a budget, you need to attend that meeting. Or if your budget is not delayed, you can issue an LPO in good time so that you can be able to be included in that annual meeting, because we have all the agricultural cooperatives in different values, coffee, tea, baretram, fish, name them, and circles. So we will be as a family. We meet once in a year. Most likely on the final day when we are going to have our resolutions, the head is likely to come to listen on the resolutions, the issues that we want to be unlocked so that we can use cooperatives as an accelerator to unlock the economic development of this country. I've answered all the questions. I think we can
Thank you.
go for lunch.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that was very thorough. Olga and Bwana Tom, you are the ones who are standing between the group and lunch, and we're here today and we're here tomorrow. So literally, if you limit just to 3 sentences each, so you need to prioritize what those 3 sentences will be. And Olga, before your remarks, I'll request the lady to stand just so that we can recognize her. Yes, thumbs up, just simama. Watu wakujue na watu waelewe kwa nini nimekuuliza usimame. So Olga, you'll start by introducing who the lady is, why you deem, or why is she important? Why did I ask her to stand? Your 3 sentences. Tom, I'll give you just 3. After that, we proceed to lunch. We'll see how to reconfigure the remaining part of the program. I hope you have felt responded to by the panel, the high-level panel. You have, huh? So at least if you're going for lunch, you're feeling you have engaged. And you can always ask more questions after that. Panel, thank you very much. Let's hear from Olga. 3 sentences, Tom, 3 sentences. You'll tell us who our mystery guest is. Over to you.
Mystery guest. Okay, thank you very much, Martin. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Dr. Rose Karemi from the International Cooperative Alliance. Dr. Rose Karemi is very important to us as a program, and we've been engaging even on policy work that's going on at Africa level. Dr. Rose, I had challenged you, beyond meeting at these big meetings, you need to now involve the counties. And so make sure you see her at lunchtime and see how best your county can also engage and give input. But Daktari, please pass our regards to Dr. Sifa as well. We thank you for the continued support and the linkages. Thank you. A round of applause, please. Okay, so my second 3 sentence was what happens to counties that have not been trained on PPMP? As I mentioned, the program is ending, as this phase of the program is ending, yeah? But the syllabus and all the materials also belong now to Strathmore University Business School to provide that course openly, just the way there's the worker cooperatives curriculum domiciled at the Cooperative University as well. But should there be another iteration of the program, we'd be happy to engage. The third question of the 3 sentences is from Siaya about the technical training for cooperative officers. That concern is noted. I'm not able to speak at the moment, but if we should have another iteration of the program, we'd be happy to interact further and see how best to incorporate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Olga. Lynette, if you don't mind, you can stand up. I don't know if Kevin is in the room. Yeah, Kevin and Lynette, just wave your hands. So those are the 2 Strathmore colleagues involved in our executive education programs on public policy, on sustainability. So Olga, I have had that challenge, but we need to consult Dr. Njenga, Professor Israel Da Silva, and explore what can be done with all this content that was shared. But I hear there's room for innovation. Professor Nyamongo, I'll give you a last word. There's also opportunity for universities to collaborate. So I hear there's some interesting opportunities for the Cooperative Alliance and on behalf of the government. How do we make these opportunities available, building on what Global Communities has given us? So let's hear from Tom, and then Professor Nyamongo. I'll give you the last word.
Thank you very much. Actually, you have preempted what I wanted to say. Maybe just to say, Strathmore exists to serve society the way society needs to be served. Our mission really is to spearhead the transformation of our continent. And that is through capacity building in leadership and in other technical areas. So we are catalysts. So in our role, we have executive programs which we run, and the PPMP has been mentioned. That's not the only one. We also have modular programs, even for people who can come and actually partake your own leadership, management programs, and I can see some of our colleagues in that area who are around, and I think over lunch they will raise their hands up and speak to us in that context. And finally, the Director Cooperatives Nandi, regarding partnership with Kamaua Solar, I will take your message, and I'm sure something will come out, because one of the ways in which we execute our mandates is through partnerships, to execute all sorts of management, training, and leadership development and development initiatives. So we shall take your intent and request forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tom. So we'll give the final word to Professor.
Yes, I'll pick up from from Nandi County. On your way back to Namgoi, which is near Kapsabet, just after Eldama Ravine, stop by a cooperative known as Mumperes Multipurpose Cooperative and see what they have done with regard to green energy, solar power, biogas, water harvesting. They are in fact, they're even providing seedlings to farmers, specifically to women, so that women do not have to spend a lot of time looking for firewood. They have a program that is actually bringing in youth into the management of cooperatives. And the average age of leaders there is 38 years. So as on your way back to Nandi, please stop by and borrow a leaf as we wait for Professor Kimani Wasola.
Kamau Wasola.
Kamau, he can also be Kimani.
He can also Kimani Kamau Wasola.
Yeah. In terms of then programs that we can draw from Cooperative University. You know, the university itself, the motto is empowering communities. And we have various programs from the undergraduate all the way to PhD on cooperatives. And we also have what we are calling short courses for those who would like to benefit from those short courses on cooperative management. So we have all these programs, and Prof and myself this morning we are discussing on how we can collaborate even more so that we can support the movement, we can support the counties, we can support cooperative education throughout the country. So yes, CUK is available to provide the necessary resources, and Professor Oboka Wycliffe, he is in charge of the director of the Institute of Cooperative Development, and I'm sure he will provide us more information over lunch. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's a very powerful place to close. I'd promised to take a second round, but just in the interest of lunch, I promise we'll still come back, get those questions, and we are still together tomorrow. The session has been beamed live on YouTube and Twitter since morning, and anything that is not captured today will still get recorded, and I think will be available for the panelists, so don't feel left out. The two questions I had for the panel, and you'll tell me whether we've addressed them. Number one, cooperatives are major contributors to the national development and provide a social economic inclusion framework. What do you see as some cross-cutting opportunities this sector presents in sustainable development? That was question number one. Number two was, how can sustainability opportunity be exploited at the cooperative sector, or cooperatives drive the sustainability agenda for impact, issues of inclusion, vulnerable groups, equality, climate, decent pay? Do you sense we've covered those? I actually think exceptionally well. Anything to add?
We didn't mention was on gender equality, and we are looking at how cooperatives are formed and managed, and I think something we need to insist is that one. It's where we have women-led cooperatives which are very vibrant, and we give space to these kind of these these groups so that they can also make decisions. Another thing is what Prof has mentioned about the youth, which sometimes we feel they are left out. But there are other tailored and specific activities they can do at the cooperative level in the youth. Even if we are talking about not having land, they can hire or get into the digital platform systems where they can support us in marketing or organizing data that we will need. So that is one area I feel maybe we had left out. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. And with that, I want us to give a round of applause to the panel, the high-level panel. Now, according to the program, it looks like we are very far behind, but all we have to dispense of today are 2 items. The presentation on advocacy strategies toward Cabinet and County Assembly. The colleagues from the Council of Governors are leading that. We have Narok, Bomet, Nyeri, and Kilifi counties. And then a panel discussion on stakeholder engagement, public participation, operationalization of the county cooperative policy and legislation. Bwana Bobby Mkangi, who was with us here earlier, is the one leading that. I'll consult with Olga and Pamela over the break. We can spend about 45 minutes on lunch and then come back and reconvene here. If we have energy, we can compress those 2 or at least do one of them. And whatever remains, we'll spill it over to tomorrow. What I want us to appreciate, this is not just a conference or a workshop. You realize it's a real-time policy-making undertaking. And I really appreciate that everybody has spent time, been very actively engaged. So with that, thank you very much to the panel. We can proceed to lunch at the back. Our panelists will all be available. If there was anything you wanted to follow up, please feel free to engage with them. Let's meet back here in 45 minutes. Enjoy your lunch.